Ultraman review. That's right, it's time for an Ultraman review. My first attempt at breaking into the Ultraman fandom, I was rejected almost entirely. Although all the Godzilla fans were totally down to see me do Ultraman stuff, the Ultraman people weren't too happy about it. But you know what? We're doing it anyways.
Ultraman! Ultraman! Here he comes from the sky! Ultraman! Ultraman! Watch our hero fly!
Also gotta pimp out the shirt, rocking the Godzillaverse Huff merchandise. This one's pretty sweet. I like it quite a bit. Although the blue matches the blue of the jeans that I'm wearing today. So it looks like I just kind of blend into one thing, but it's fine. I'm gonna do the intro. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video. And today we're gonna be doing a new thing, an Ultraman review. That's right, reviewing Ultraman. So we're doing the Ultraman set. You know, we got this thing here. Reviewing the Mill Creek Ultraman release. I recommend it. I don't own any other Ultra series. This is the only Mill Creek release I have. I'm thinking about picking up Ultra Q, and we'll see if I go anywhere else after Ultraman. I don't know. We'll see. But I wanted to say that so that everybody knows that I'm reviewing the Japanese dubs of I'm reviewing the Japanese version of this show. The original version. The ones I watched were Japanese with English subtitles. I've seen a few of the English dubbed episodes. Actually, all the episodes we're reviewing today I have watched the English dubs for. That's not going to be the case going forward because this is only part 1 of our Ultraman 1966 review. I'm posting this video today because it's Ultraman Day, so it's like, yeah, celebrate the birthday of the original Ultraman, not this show. Actually, I believe it's the birthday of the first appearance of the character Ultraman, who showed up on like a stage play before the show premiered. So I figured Ultraman Day, I might as well do an Ultraman review. So we're reviewing disc 1 of this Blu-ray set, so it's like the first 7 episodes. And without further ado, let's just jump right on into it with episode 1, Ultra Operation Number 1. Shin Hayata's plane, part of the Science Patrol, crashes after colliding with a red sphere that was chasing a blue sphere. Hayata is then visited by an alien from the nebula M78 who explains to him that the blue sphere is an alien called Bemular. The alien then gives his life to Hayata in the form of the Beta capsule. The blue sphere transforms into a shrimpy-armed kaiju. The Science Patrol, aka the SSSP, arrives on the scene and soon Ultraman, Hayata, appears and does battle with Bemular. After reverting Bemular to an orb, Ultraman explodes him with his... I've watched this show in English, I've watched this show in Japanese, I don't know how to say this word. Every time I read it in the subtitles, I don't know, I make up the pronunciation in my head. It's Ultraman's Specium Ray, that's how we're gonna say it in this review. You know, when he does this, fires a little beam, Waybig does the same thing, you know what I'm talking about. This is an okay episode. It's easy to follow, it has a nice setup for the rest of the series. The fight is okay, but it's nothing special. I would say this episode is not outstanding by any means. The effects are fairly cheap by Tsuburaya's standards. This is the guy who brought us Godzilla after all. And that'll be a norm for the series. This series does not have the greatest of special effects, so I'll mention it here so I can get it out of the way, and I will only mention the special effects from this point on if they are either good or bad, if they are worse than this point. I think this is standard special effects. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're terrible. They're 1966 TV show special effects. Considering their 1966 TV show special effects, I actually think they're pretty impressive. But comparing it to Tsuburaya's work with Godzilla, it just doesn't really hold up for me. Personally, and this might offend some people, I don't know, I view Ultraman as the problem that people in America have with Godzilla. I think a lot of the complaints people have with Godzilla aren't actually complaints with Godzilla, they're complaints about things like Ultraman, where they complain about cheap looking suits and men dancing around in cardboard cities. You know, all the complaints, the rubber suited men, blah blah blah, all the generic stuff that people will say to try and put down Godzilla movies. I think they're thinking of Ultraman when they say that stuff because the Godzilla movies by comparison look outstanding, and that's not against Ultraman. Again, Ultraman is a product of the time. They did the best they could and they did a really good job given what they had to work with. I think it's truly impressive what they were able to accomplish on a weekly basis. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm trashing on Ultraman here. I'm just saying that I think the pop culture consciousness business relating to Godzilla is subconsciously tied to Ultraman. A lot of the complaints people have about Godzilla, I think, are subconsciously actually directed to interpretations of Ultraman over the years, because Ultraman was fairly popular when it came out in the States, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. But whatever, I just wanted to get that out of the way, saying right off the bat, I'm not a huge fan of the special effects in this show. I think they're impressive for what they are, but I don't think they hold up nowadays. Sorry. Overall, I rate episode 1 a 6 out of 10. Again, I think it's a fairly generic episode of Ultraman. It doesn't really blow me away. It's one of my least favorites. Next up, we have Shoot the Invaders. A strange UFO is spotted. Shortly after, an alien appears and starts freezing people. It communicates with the Science Patrol and explains that it's part of the Baltons. It wants to move into Earth along with billions of other Baltons like it. The Science Patrol rejects the offer, and Baltons, which is what we'll call the kaiju, grows until he's 50 meters. Now, only Ultraman can stop him. This is a pretty good episode. There's an awesome scene where Hayato risks his life to activate the beta capsule. It's one of the most exciting beta capsule activations in the whole series, if not the most exciting so far that I've seen. I have not finished the show, disclaimer. I have seen the first 9 episodes and then I stopped. We're only reviewing the first 7 today. Then I'm going to watch all the rest of them and we'll just continue with reviews as we go. The episode has a really nice setup that feels very reminiscent of shows like The Outer Limits, which I'm assuming is what Ultra Q is going to feel like when I eventually watch that show. The fight in the city at the end is very solid and feels refreshing when it takes off into the air. That's something that we don't see a lot in kaiju flicks, so I do like seeing a little aerial battle / chase. The Baltons are also interesting villains that I will not be upset to see return. I do know that they're returning villains, so I'm not going to be upset when they show back up. This episode is a solid 8 out of 10. Next up, we have episode 3, Science Patrol Move Out. Fuji and Hoshino investigate a strange well and discover Narina, the invisible kaiju whose name I don't think I'm pronouncing right. The kaiju materializes to attack power stations throughout Japan. The Science Patrol and the JSDF attempt to ambush Narina, but aren't powerful enough to stop him, so Ultraman has to appear to save the day. Having an invisible kaiju is a really neat take that hasn't really been done a lot, and the attack scene with the JSDF feels very traditional kaiju, if you know what I mean. This episode does suffer from being a bit formulaic, which will be a problem for this series as it goes on. Narina has a strange design. He appears to be built from the body of Baragon's suit with a weird paint scheme and a strange headpiece, but overall, he's pretty cool. This episode is a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have 5 seconds before the explosion, or as I like to call it, the War of the Gargantuas episode. If you've seen War of the Gargantuas, you know why. A rocket explodes, sending nukes falling into the ocean. The Science Patrol is sent out to find an unexploded nuke while Fuji takes a vacation with Hoshino. The Science Patrol investigates rumors of a mysterious kaiju rising to sink ships. They meet a man in a hospital in a scene that feels like it was ripped straight out of the beginning of War of the Gargantuas. The kaiju, Raygon, continues to sink ships before attacking Fuji's hotel in a very Gaira-esque way. The Science Patrol utilized strange means to combat Raygon, involving music and flying around the creature, which seemingly come out of left field when you watch this episode, but I'll explain that later. Eventually, Ultraman appears and fights Raygon. Ultraman discovers the nuke is attached to Raygon and in the process saves the day after killing the kaiju and flying the bomb into space 5 seconds before it explodes. This episode features an interesting plot with fun character interactions. It has mystery and intrigue. It's got well done destruction scenes and an interesting kaiju. It expands upon an episode of Ultra Q with a human-sized Raygon, which explains some of the weird things that go on with Raygon, and also explain why everyone's just familiar with the creature when he shows up. It also has an exciting finale that is enhanced by the double threat of both a kaiju and a nuclear bomb. This is my favorite episode of Ultraman that we will be reviewing today. I give it a 9 out of 10. I really like this one. Oh, what a fall from grace. Next up, we have The Secret of the Miloganda. A strange car crash / murder draws the attention of the Science Patrol, where they discover evidence of a kaiju attack. They take the samples to a biologist, played by Akihiko Hirata, who leads them to a scientist played by the beautiful Akiko Wakabashi. Through her, they discover a carnivorous plant has been radiated and is now hunting down the original scientific committee that discovered it. The Science Patrol stops the attack on Wakabayashi. The kaiju, Greenmuns, then grows to 40 meters tall and fights Ultraman in a city. This episode runs into technological limitations despite being filled with great ideas. There's an interesting flashback sequence that utilizes black and white and color very well. There are amazing actors who appear for cameos, which is awesome to see. There's a kaiju villain that feels like an early prototype for Biollante, which is really cool, and yet this episode falls short. I've talked about this on the channel recently, the difference between concept and execution. Normally, I'm talking about a bad concept with a good execution, but this is a case where we have a great concept with a bad execution, because on paper, the plot synopsis is awesome. It's got a really cool concept, but it doesn't live up to it. It's slow paced and drags in places. The ending is incredibly frustrating as Hayata takes so long to go hero that he is single-handedly responsible for the destruction caused, and the fight isn't all that well done. You can see the corners of the set and everything feels very close quarters and staged. It's clearly a battle happening on a set. There is no sense of expansion or depth. Sadly, this episode comes in with a 5 out of 10. Great premise, bad execution. Next up, we have the Coast Guard Command. Hoshino and his friends are hanging out on a dock when they get caught between some jewel thieves and a kaiju. Hoshino reports the Diamond Kick to the Science Patrol, who mobilize to catch them. I don't know why the Science Patrol get involved with the Diamond Kick and not the kaiju, but they do. The kids start investigating and learn about the monster called Geshira. The kids are kidnapped by Diamond Kick and Geshira attacks. The Science Patrol fails to stop Geshira and Ultraman appears to save our heroes. Geshira is defeated after his fin is ripped off and the Diamond Kick are captured by Hayata after he transforms back into his human state. This is a solid episode with an exciting Godzilla's Revenge reminiscent plot years before the movie Godzilla's Revenge came out. Geshira has an interesting design and is defeated in a refreshing way without the use of the Specium Ray. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. Next up, the Blue Stone of Baraji. A meteor falls from the sky and those who investigate it disappear. The Japanese Science Patrol members take an American to the Middle East to find out what's happening. The Science Patrol plane crashes due to a strange gravity beam. They then find the lost city of Baraji, or Baraji, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. At first, the city appears abandoned, but it's soon discovered to be populated by elderly people led by a young queen. They all worship a god, Ultraman Noah. The kaiju responsible for all the disasters, Antora, attacks the city. Ultraman tries to defend the city, but ultimately it's a blue stone left by Noah that defeats Antora. This is a very solid episode with a good plot, nice atmosphere, great effects, an impressive set, and an interesting / creative monster fight that not even Ultraman himself can resolve alone. This episode feels very Star Trek the original series to me, with our scientific explorers investigating a strange new society that seemingly at first might be abandoned, but there's also this weird society living there and this interesting looking temple design. Although unlike Star Trek, this episode manages to capture my attention by having a kaiju show up. I also love the backstory here, where this strange civilization worships Ultraman like a god. They refer to him as Noah, and I love that the Ultraman series decided to explain this in a later series. I'm not sure which series this is explained in, but the character Ultraman Noah is a character we meet who's supposed to be the oldest Ultraman or something, like the original Ultraman, or at least the oldest that we know of, and he gave the city the blue stone. I don't know why or how. I don't know that backstory because I haven't seen all that stuff, but I love that they expanded upon it later on. I know that they do. I just don't know entirely what they do with it. Things like that make me interested to watch later Ultraman series. Again, I really like that this episode ends with Ultraman not being able to stop the threat on his own, because usually the fights are kind of cheap. Ultraman just kind of wrestles around with the kaiju for a little bit before he one-shots them with the Specium Ray. And it gets to the point where you're like, why don't you just start by shooting them with the beam? Like, why not just start with that? I always like when they do these kind of moments where not even the beam can stop the monsters, where the kaiju will just keep coming. And this is an episode where they do something where, you know, kind of out of left field. It's not even Ultraman himself who throws the stone. It's one of the Science Patrol members. It's their captain who throws the stone, who's actually able to defeat the kaiju. It's good stuff and very refreshing in a series that, as I said, is quite repetitive. I give this episode a 9 out of 10. It's my second favorite so far. So that'll do it for my Ultraman 66 Part 1 review. I don't know when Part 2 is going to come out. I have not watched the rest of the episodes yet. I need to watch them before I can review them. So I don't know. It'll come out at some point, maybe a year from now, maybe the next time it's Ultraman Day. we'll see. I don't know. It also depends on how this video is received. If this video is not received very well, I don't think I'm going to put in the time to prioritize that one. So I guess we'll have to find out. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.